am so excited because I have another MS warrior here with me here on the podcast. And it's been really nice talking to folks that have multiple sclerosis because I feel like, in many ways, at least for me, I could say it's felt as if I was on this journey alone. And it's been really refreshing to talk to folks who, also have experienced or are currently experiencing, working through their diagnosis or whatever that looks like. It's been a great experience to, meet up and, have the opportunity to chat with folks that are also in the same boat. So I am so happy to welcome Charles Watkins here to the Eat and Meat podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me about your experience as an MS warrior.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. So what I do love, or not love, what I always kind of like start out these actual conversations with is just asking, when were you diagnosed? And on top of that, what were some of the symptoms that you were experiencing that led you to, see either like your primary or even a neurologist about what was going on in your body?
So I got diagnosed in 2019,
Okay.
but 2018 I got into a car accident and I
Mm.
had like a pretty significant concussion. And so they did, brain MRI, CT, X-ray, and the neurologist saw white matter on my brain
Mm.
MRI. And she was like, this is too much white matter for someone I was 37 years old at the time,
Mm-hmm.
someone who's in their late 30s. This is like, white matter for someone who's in like their 60s.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know what any of that means. Tell me what I should do. And she said,
Right.
well, we're going to do blood work. So they did blood work. They, did a differential diagnosis for all sorts of like autoimmune diseases, and I came
Right.
back tested negative for all of them. And so I thought nothing of it. Um, and she said, just repeat the test in a year
Mm-hmm.
um, to see what's going on. So it just so happened that I was living in South Georgia at the time, and I had moved to
Okay.
Atlanta, and I was in a jujitsu tournament, um,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to like do a submission, and my hands went numb,
Oh
like
wow.
completely numb. And so I was like, that's not normal. Let me let me go to the doctor. So I go to my ortho and they test me and they tell me I have spinal stenosis. And he
Mm.
said that could be, what's causing it, but I'm going to send you to a neurologist just in case. So send me to a neurologist. The neurologist does the blood work, the head CT, the MRI, repeats all of that stuff, and then says, well, we don't like what we see. We want to do a spinal tap. So they
Right.
do the spinal tap and they find inflammation in my spinal fluid and they're like, you have multiple sclerosis. We're going to get you in with our specialist. They're going to put you on some meds and, um, and he's going to talk to you about it. So I go to the specialist. He says, you have relapsing and remitting MS. Um,
Mm.
you have active lesions that we're going to try to do something with and help you out. And because one of my lesions was on my optic nerve, so like I think it was in my right eye, he says that we're going to put you on what's it called? Um, Rituximab. So I was like, okay, just tell me what I need to do. And he's like, that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna
Right.
take the Rituximab, do an infusion. Um, and so it was like 500 milligrams of Rituxan every 6 months for the first
Mm-hmm.
year. And at that time, I had just gotten a job. I was a prosecutor, and I had just gotten a job with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Buffalo.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, me and my wife we moved to Buffalo. I get in with the doctor, and this doctor tells me that Rituxan is off label for multiple sclerosis. Um, it's usually, most people see Ocrevus because that's the commercial you see, you know. But
Right.
she's like, Rituxan is more, it's prescribed for cancer. It's a chemo drug.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, but she was like, if it's working, we can, basically we'll ask for permission from your insurance company to keep you on it. And so she kept
Mm.
me on it, but I was having really bad fatigue, which I think everyone with MS, the one common symptom with everyone in MS is fatigue. And
Right.
so, but she kept me on it, and then I was going through the infusions, and I would get like really tired in month 5. And she's like, that's because your white blood cell count is reconstituting faster than the drugs can knock it out. And so she upped the
Mm.
dose to 1,000 milligrams, and um, then I think then she got it to 1,000 milligrams every 5 months, and then I was still reconstituting really fast, so it went up to 2,000 milligrams every 5 months. So I would do 1,000, then take 2 weeks, then another 1,000, and then in 5 months do that again. And that's a lot. It was a lot. And when I moved to
Right.
Baton Rouge, my neurologist was like, I see what they see, and I see why they're doing it. So we're going to keep you on it until, something changes. But then I started having like allergic reactions during the infusions where they would have to give me Benadryl in my IV. And he was like,
Wow.
let's try something else. So they put me on Kesimpta. So I just take the shot, the pen once a month, and I've been pretty much under control since then. So things have been good. I mean, I've had relapses, but they haven't been because of active lesions. It'll be something like I got the flu and the
Right.
viral infection caused my MS to flare.
Right.
But it hasn't been because, or I would like go to the gym and sit in the sauna for too long and get really hot
Right.
and cause myself to have a flare. So, but it hasn't been active lesions. My lesions have been stable since I've been on the Kesimpta, so that was good.
That's, thank you for sharing that. And, it's really good to hear that you're stable at this point. Um, because I know, especially like when it comes to the changing of the different medications, sometimes even with that can cause,
Mhm.
additional, issues there. So that's a blessing that,
Yeah.
you've been as stable as you have, Um, for folks who might be wondering too, beyond like the optic nerve stuff, like with your vision, are there what other symptoms? Oh, you said in the tingling, the numbness in your hands. Do you have any other symptoms that are contributing from your MS?
Um, so I think one of the symptoms that we don't know for sure, but we're thinking because I've
Mm.
had because I was an athlete, I've had joint replacement surgeries. So I had to have
Okay.
my knee replaced, and I've had to have it replaced 3 times since 2021 because my body
Oh
isn't
wow.
isn't like wasn't accepting the prosthetics. And my ortho thinks that it could be related to my MS because I'm having a lot of spasticity in my
Okay.
hamstring and in my calf, and that's stopping the
Mm.
joint from healing. So this most
Right.
recent implant that he did actually does the bending for me and does the straightening
Mm.
for me. So
Okay.
it's been a better journey. I still have muscle weakness and my right
Right.
side is my affected side. So I
Right.
still have muscle weakness on my right side, and that's where my knee replacement is. But other than that, those are really the symptoms. When I'm having a flare, I can tell because my right arm goes numb.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's the biggest telltale sign for me when I'm having a
Right.
flare. Like
Right.
I had the flu recently, and I was in the airport.
Mhm.
I was like, I'm tired, and my hand is numb. I'm dropping things, I
Yeah.
think I'm having a flare. So I
Yeah.
get back to Baton Rouge, I get off the plane, I go straight to the hospital, and they're looking at me like, how do you know? And I'm just like, I mean, I've been dealing with it for 7 years at this point, so I know my
Right.
body,
Right.
and they're like, well, let's check. And they're like, well, we do see, we see some inflammation. You do have the flu. That can cause a flare. I was like, I
Right.
know, I'm not trying to tell the doctors what they know, but I
Right.
know what I know too,
Right.
and I know my body. And so they just, put me in the hospital, give me, massive doses of IV steroids to kind of calm down the flare and the
Right.
inflammation, and then send me home.
Right. And you know what? Thank you for pointing that out too, because I think a lot of people, well, I should say a lot of people, but I think what some folks don't realize is that at least like many people that I've talked to who have MS, us knowing our bodies is something that we have to do
Hmm.
because it's like to just completely dismiss all these things, it could lead us down a really serious road. And so,
Right.
do you feel like pre your diagnosis, you had an understanding of how your body operated, or even, or was it even a thought of in your head? You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, because listen, I was a high school. I played high school football. I was a D1 athlete, so I had an idea of, I had to know my body because my body was my job, you know. And so I think, and even my physical therapist, they kind of talk about how I have like better body awareness than a lot of their patients. And it's not because of anything other than the fact that I've just spent so
Mm,
much time like working out, lifting weights, doing all the things, so I know when something's wrong. Like if I'm trying to lift a certain amount of weight and I can't
right,
push it, and I could push it last week and I can't push it this week, like something's going on with my body. Let me go to my doctor and tell them what's going on. You know?
right, yeah. And so you were saying you've been, are you still doing physical therapy at this time?
Yeah, yeah. I do physical
Yeah.
therapy.
And
But
oh no, no, go ahead.
well,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, no, I'm recovering. Well, I'm still recovering from the most recent knee surgery. So I'm doing
Mm,
therapy for that, and they also do therapy for my MS for like a lot of right side stuff, just strengthening my right side to get it to catch up to my left side.
right. And I just want to let folks that are listening know, like the reason why I'd asked that, because a lot of us that do have MS, we have like different things. Like for me, I had to do like it was like almost 2 years of physical therapy. My right side, I would say like just my whole right leg, I lost a lot of the ability for uh, I went started to really start to restrict, and I had a lot of spasming going on, so much so that I couldn't stand. And so,
Mm,
depending on your situation, sometimes atrophy of your muscles, like you're losing that muscle mass. That's another thing that a lot of us have to deal with. I lost a lot of muscle mass in my left arm, and I didn't really do a lot of like physical therapy for that. But it's a constant, right? Like
yeah,
constantly us like trying to, I laugh when I think of this, but I think of us in some ways like the bionic kind of like
yeah,
person, we're constantly trying to like
yeah.
make things, work so we can get through our
Yeah.
day to day. You know what I'm saying?
It is a constant struggle. Like
Right.
every day is different. You know?
Right.
And
Right.
I don't think a lot of people don't. If you don't, if you don't have it, then you wouldn't know.
Exactly.
It's
Right.
one of those invisible, and I call it, invisible disabilities, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't see it, but there's always something going on. There's always something. Like just the general fatigue is different.
Right.
It's just different. I can sleep 8 hours
Hmm.
and still be exhausted all day. You know?
Right. Right. And I tell people that all the time. I always explain it as I feel like someone has put a weighted blanket or a few weighted blankets on my body and is expecting me to go through the day.
Right.
trying to like get through work and whatever else, and it's just like I feel so weighed down. And even with my brain, it's like it's super foggy. I'm trying to do all the things, but when that fatigue hits, it's like there's only so much you can do. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Right.
I wanted to ask too, like when you were diagnosed, because I and I'll say for myself too, when I was diagnosed, I instantly thought, okay, I thought MS was typically something you saw with white women, right? But then I got my diagnosis and I was like, okay, this is clearly not the case. But then I guess also on top of that, you being a black man, was it something where you were just like, well, I've never known this to be prevalent within the black male community? Did that ever cross your mind or was it not even a thing?
Well, when I got diagnosed, my doctor told me that. It was like it's exceedingly rare for black men to
Mm,
get MS. It's not something that happens often.
right.
So I was like, okay. I mean, and to me, in my brain, it's like if it's gonna happen, if something weird is gonna happen, it's gonna happen to me. I mean, I'm left-handed. I have AB positive blood.
Me
So
too.
it's just,
Okay.
all the things you can think about that like rarely happen, it happened to me. So it's just, I kind of just took it in stride. Like it's like, okay, black men rarely get it, but I got it. So what are we
Right.
doing? You
And,
know?
right. Right, right. And it's funny, like the more that I started like learning, well, you know what, to think about it too, even before my diagnosis, I mean, I had heard of Richard Pryor, I had heard of
Yeah.
Montel Williams, but it just still didn't click. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just two people
Hmm.
out of the whole, like, I'd never heard of any other black men having it. I had one of my family members. She was an in-law, but she was diagnosed in the 80s. But that it just
Hmm.
seems like so rare. But
Yeah,
what I'm finding, you can let me know too. I feel like there's so many more people being diagnosed. Oh, bless you, being
thank you.
diagnosed with MS, and I think it's possibly because we were being misdiagnosed throughout the years. You know what I'm
I
saying?
do too. I do too. And I think a part of it is that, and a part of it is like we're learning a lot more about MS. And because it's like my wife's a doctor, and so she talks about like
Uh
it's,
huh.
it's when people come in with certain complaints, it's always a part of the differential now,
Right.
and that hasn't always
Right.
been it hasn't always been that way.
Mm-hmm.
So like she's like the first things we rule out when people come in with like numbness or fatigue or unexplained pain, we rule out lupus, we rule out MS.
Right.
And
Right.
so and she was like, but that hasn't always been that way. That's like, in recent medicine, and I mean recent like in the last 20 years.
Right. Right.
So I think a
And
lot of people
it's
have been
crazy because when
misdiagnosed.
yeah, for sure. And it's funny because even when I think about when I was actually diagnosed, I mean, I was super lucky. I couldn't even believe it because when I hear people's stories of how long it took for them to receive their diagnosis, um, I had an ER visit. I had, because of I had so much pain. They did I think they did an MRI. They were like, you have same thing, the white matter on my brain. Like this is a little strange. We need to do some additional testing. I mean, everything kind of like boom, 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 and like within 3 months, I was diagnosed with. Initially, they said transverse myelitis, but then they were like, okay, no, this is multiple sclerosis. Like we've pinpointed it, and this is what it is.
Mhm.
And all that to say, how long did it take for you to get a definite diagnosis?
Um, if you count the first time when they did the blood work,
Mm-hmm.
back in 2018, then about a year.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but I mean, from the second visit to the diagnosis was probably about 3 weeks. So when I did the follow-up visit in 2019, they did the blood work. They looked at the blood work.
Okay.
They scheduled the lumbar
Mm-hmm.
puncture, and then when the lumbar puncture results came back, they confirmed it. They told me before the lumbar puncture that they're pretty sure that this is what it is, but when the lumbar puncture came back, they confirmed it. So it probably took about 3 to 4 weeks.
Mm.
And then
Okay.
I had my first
And,
infusion
and
was
you know that's
within
common. What
I was about to say my first infusion was within days of my diagnosis.
you say your first?
My first infusion,
Oh wow.
yeah, it was
Okay.
within days of my
Mm.
diagnosis.
Okay. Okay, and then, that's interesting. That's why I love to hear, like, because everyone's situation is different, but it does seem like a lot of folks have that decent stint of time where they're kind of like
Hmm.
waiting in the in the wings to like figure out what is really going on with my body. So but that I love the fact that they were like, let's just kind of get on it as opposed to kind of like delaying the treatment
Right.
in the process. Now, beyond like the treatments that what you're doing now, so you said you're taking Kesimpta now.
Yeah.
Okay, are you taking any additional supplements or anything like that to help you along with your process?
No, well, I take vitamin D,
Yeah.
um, because because of the steroids that you have to take when you have a flare can cause like bone loss. So,
Okay. Yep.
so I take vitamin D for that, and then just try to eat a healthy diet and exercise.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
And I think a lot of people dismiss the diet piece. And I should say they dismiss it, but I think some people, well, no, let me backtrack. I think a lot of people now are waking up to the fact that diet is something that's important.
hmm
Initially, with a lot of health concerns, people just didn't really correlate that with them actually having a healthy body. And so, are you doing like the swank or something like that? What have you been doing to like in terms of like improving your diet?
Well, really, I just try to eat healthy. I prioritize protein
Right.
and fiber.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. No, that and I think that is so important. And also too, I wanted to ask because I know a lot of black men get a bad rap for taking care of their bodies and seeing doctors and stuff. Was this like the wake up call for you to start taking care, or were you always someone proactive with your health?
Always.
That's
Like I
amazing.
said,
Yeah.
like being an because being an athlete, like my body was like how is how I paid for college,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always been active. I've always wanted to do something active,
Right.
so and I can't afford to not be active because I'm 6'6", so
Oh wow. Okay.
my frame can carry a lot of weight, and
Right.
not always a healthy amount of weight. So
Right.
I have to be cognizant of not just how much I weigh, but like where it is and how I'm carrying it. Because,
Right.
I want these joints that I had replaced to last a long time. And if I'm carrying a whole bunch of weight on them, they won't.
Right.
So
Right. And and so you were saying you're very active and stuff like that. Has your physical activity, have you had to alter anything since your diagnosis, or are you still kind of like doing what you've always done?
I still do what I've always done. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
I at this point the real limitation is recovering from the knee surgery. So
Okay.
that's what's really slowed me down. But other than that, I still kind of do what I do. I might not do it as much or lift as heavy as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's more being cognizant of the fact that like my right side is not as strong because every time I have a flare, my right side gets weaker. And so it's not
Mm.
as strong as my left side. And
Right.
so, being cognizant of that fact, like I can't just throw 400 pounds on the bench and try to, go crazy. So I got to scale that
Right.
back a little bit. And I'm
Right.
44 years old, so I really shouldn't be doing that anyway. So stuff like that.
Right. Right. No, it's so funny because I'm 47, and so sometimes when I'm like working out or whatever, I'm like thinking, I'm like, is this my MS or is this my age that's kind of like
Right,
stalling me? You know
right,
what I'm saying? I
right,
want to say it's my age because I'm like I can't throw everything on MS, but it does make you wonder sometimes. It's like which one is it at this
right,
point? But I'm grateful, and I'm pretty sure you are just grateful that I'm still able to move and do the things that I thought that I might not be able to. Because that's something I wanted to ask too. Like when you were diagnosed, was that something that went through your head? Like, oh my gosh, will I be able to do the things? You
I,
know,
I don't think so. I think that it was just a matter of like I don't. Look, I remember the conversation with my doctor when I got
uh-huh.
diagnosed. My first question was, okay, now what?
Mm,
Now what do we do now? Because it's just how do we attack this? How are we going to treat it? It's not curable. I know that, but how are we going to treat it? Because people, live long times. I was like, you know, first question, is it going to kill me? No, you pretty
right,
much are going to live a normal life. Okay, then how do we treat it? What's the treatment?
right,
That's it. I
right.
didn't, because the fact of it changing the way I do things never really, and it has, just being
Mm-hmm.
realistic, it has. But,
Right,
you know, the fact of me accepting the fact that it changes the way I'm going to do things, I don't think that ever really, that never happened. But
right.
understanding that, you know, I'm getting older, um, I have an illness. Um, but it's not going to define me. It's not going to
Yes,
control what I do. It may augment what I do, but age augments what we do anyway.
that
So,
part.
if I just keep getting older, it's like my grandmother used to always say, just keep on living. So that's it.
Right,
I just keep on
right.
living.
No, I love that. I love that. And I, and that's all we can do is just keep on living. And I love the fact that you have this positive outlook. And it's been really refreshing talking to other folks too, who also have a similar mindset. It's like, I can't let this disease stop me from living. And I feel like, and let me know how you feel, but I feel like since I've been diagnosed, it's given me more so of a reason to be like, I'm living my life. I've got to do the things that I want to do because I've taken things for granted in the past, and now it's like, no, this life I have to live it as best as I can. Was that like a more of a wake up call for you to do that, or has this been your baseline all along?
Well, it's been my baseline all along, but then,
Yeah,
also like in between the bouts of fatigue, right? Like
yeah,
I want to get things done. I want to do as much
yeah.
as I can, And now, and my wife and I, since my diagnosis, we have three small children. So
Wow.
I got to hang out with those rats as long as I can, you know.
Right.
And I have to be the best version of me that I can be for them because,
Right.
I mean, they don't know daddy's sick. They don't get
Right.
that. They
Right.
don't, all they know is, you know, there's daddy. I want to play.
Oh,
And
right.
that's it. And
Right.
so, there's really no room for, you know, anything other than pushing forward.
Right. Right. I love that. Oh my gosh, Charles, thank you so much for this time. This was amazing.
Oh, well,
This
thank you. It was a good time.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. Like it's just refreshing to have a black man here to talk to because it's always it's always like common to see women talk about
Mhm.
stuff like this, but I think this will be helpful for other black men as well, just to see that, okay, oh, especially if they've been diagnosed with MS, I'm not alone in this. There's
Right.
somebody else that's living their life, married, has kids, all the things, and they're still able to live their best life. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Well, thank you for having me.
You are welcome. And y'all, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Eat Me podcast. I will see y'all next week. This was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.